My name is Madison Clark, and just a few months ago, I truly believed I was living the kind of life people only dream of, the kind of life that looked effortless, curated, and secure. At 34, I had carved out a life in Portland that felt solid. My job as a cybercrime investigator for the state of Oregon wasn't glamorous, but it gave me purpose. I spent my days helping uncover fraud rings, tracking criminal patterns through dark web footprints, and giving victims a fighting chance in the digital age. I lived in a warm, light-filled brownstone in the Pearl District, a place I'd renovated myself. Soft gray walls, brick accents, reclaimed wood shelving I spent 3 weekends sanding down. My favorite part? A small balcony overlooking the river where I drink coffee every morning, rain or shine. And then there was Brandon. Brandon Clark was my husband of 7 years, a pediatric surgeon, calm, collected, the kind of man who moved through life like a steady stream, unshaken, reliable, present. People would always say, "You two make it look easy." And in truth, we did. I believed in us. We had routines, Saturday morning walks to the farmer's market, Sunday crosswords over French press coffee. We disagreed sometimes, but never cruelly. We made space for each other. At least I thought we did. What I wanted was never a mansion or a spotlight marriage. What I wanted was presence, kindness, a partner who showed up even when it was inconvenient. Someone who didn't just promise loyalty, but lived it. I didn't know then that I had built a life on a carefully crafted illusion. When Melissa, my younger sister, knocked on our front door that summer afternoon, I had no idea she'd be the wrecking ball to it all. She was 30, vibrant, unpredictable, the wild one of the family. Her life was a series of restarts. Art school dropout, yoga teacher, then lifestyle influencer chasing brand deals in LA. Her last attempt had flopped. No savings, no stability, no plan. She hugged me tightly, mascara streaking faintly beneath her sunglasses. "I just need a place to crash for a couple months. 3, tops." Brandon didn't say no, but I saw the hesitation in his eyes. "Madison," he said, after Melissa unpacked her things into the guest room. "You sure about this?" "She's my sister," I said. "She needs us." That's how it started. Weeks turned into months. Melissa said Portland's rental market was impossible. Every showing had a line out the door. She picked up a job at a local gallery, casual shifts, always flexible. I welcomed her company at first. We cooked together. She brought energy into the house. Her chaotic, colorful presence felt like life. I didn't know it was a storm. I missed the signs. At first, they were just shadows. Brandon's late shifts got later. Melissa started wearing his sweatshirts. They laughed too hard at things I didn't hear, shared glances I couldn't interpret. I chalked it up to closeness, to my own fatigue. I was working a big case involving a crypto laundering ring. I barely had time to sleep, let alone obsess over family dynamics. I ignored it when Melissa came home with takeout from Brandon's favorite Thai place, the same dish he had been too tired to eat with me that week. I ignored it when Brandon added her to the household Spotify account and started creating shared playlists. Then came the whispers, the too long silences when I walked into a room, the way Melissa sometimes watched Brandon with this hungry, curious intensity. It clung to the walls like smoke, unseen but suffocating. Camille noticed it before I did. We were having lunch at a rooftop cafe downtown, the sky slate gray with an oncoming drizzle. Melissa had texted Brandon 3 times in 10 minutes. I brushed it off as her being needy. Camille, always blunt, raised a brow. "She's texting your husband like they're planning a honeymoon." I laughed, but something in me twitched. "She's just anxious," I said. "It's her thing. She spirals." Camille didn't laugh with me. She just sipped her drink and said, "Madison, you trust people like it's your job." "It is my job," I said with a smirk, trying to steer us away. But that night, the thought stuck. Was I being too generous, too trusting? No, I told myself Brandon would never. Melissa wasn't that kind of sister. We were adults, grown, evolved, and bonded by blood. Then came that night. It was a Thursday. I was trying to check a flight confirmation on our joint credit card through Brandon's laptop. My phone app had glitched. When I opened the browser, I expected to see patient charts or Airbnb searches for our upcoming getaway. What I saw instead was a Gmail tab, open, active, Still logged in. The subject line hit me like a brick. Last night was perfect. I still feel your hands on me. Melissa. I stared at the screen, breath caught somewhere in my ribs. Brandon's reply was even worse. We need to be more careful. Madison's not stupid. There were threads upon threads. Conversations dating back months. No, years. Photos, plans, accidental cancellations, hotel receipts. Intimate details traded like candy. I scrolled through everything with the numb precision of a case review, detached, clinical. I wasn't a wife reading betrayal. I was an investigator gathering evidence, and yet there was a burn in my throat that no data point could numb. That night, Brandon came home at 9:30, dropped his keys in the tray, and kissed my cheek like nothing had changed. "You look tired," I said, plating the reheated lasagna I had made hours earlier. "Long surgery," he said, rubbing his neck. "Kid had a ruptured appendix." I stared at him, half smiling. "You save lives," I whispered. He nodded, completely unaware of the woman across from him slowly slipping into silence. That night, I lay next to him in bed, eyes wide open, while he snored gently beside me, and I decided something. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to cry, scream, or beg for answers. I was going to do what I did best: investigate, document, prepare. And then I would deliver the truth, cold, precise, and undeniable, not behind closed doors, not in private, but in front of every single person who thought they knew who we were. Because what they didn't know was that I had already started building my case. The morning after I discovered the emails, the world looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. Brandon left early, claiming he had a back-to-back schedule at Providence Children's Hospital and would probably sleep in the on-call room. He kissed my forehead, slung his duffel bag over his shoulder, and said, "Love you." I nodded, watching the door close behind him like it was the last page of a book I never wanted to read again. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, electric, heavy with the sound of things falling apart, quietly, invisibly, until they crash. I stood in the kitchen, barefoot on the cold tile, staring at the French press that still had coffee grounds from yesterday. And then I moved, not emotionally, logically, professionally. I was no longer the wife. I was the investigator. I opened my laptop, pulled out a fresh notebook, and wrote on the first page in block letters, "Case file, B+C." Below it, I wrote the date, time, and my initial finding: evidence of a romantic and sexual relationship between Brandon Clark and Melissa Cooper, sister of subject. Duration: estimated 2+ years. Motive: TBD. Intent: suspected manipulation and concealment. This wasn't a breakdown. It was the beginning of a digital autopsy of my marriage, my family, and everything I thought was real. I started with Brandon's devices. He used the same passcode for everything, 6 digits, our wedding date. I mirrored his iCloud to a dummy account using a forensic sync tool I'd used on hundreds of cases. Legally, ethically gray? Maybe. But the man was sleeping with my sister and lying to my face. I wasn't worried about ethics anymore. The data rolled in like a flood: text logs, calendar entries, voice memos, emails, GPS history. And what I found was calculated. Brandon and Melissa weren't just sneaking around. They were planning, together, with consistency, coordination, and audacity. They used a shared Google Calendar under pseudonyms, Ben and Riley. Every event was coded. Volunteer shift, museum, il hotel check-in downtown. Meal prep at M's, il dinner at a rooftop lounge. MD shift, overnight. Il sleepover at her apartment. I layered the data on a timeline, color-coded, cross-referenced with financial statements. I overlaid GPS data with timestamps from Uber rides, hotel charges with our joint account withdrawals, Melissa's social media posts with Brandon's location pings. Every lie they told had a digital footprint. It took me 12 hours to map it all out. By 9 p.m., I had a wall-sized investigation board in the guest room. Ironically, the room Melissa once called her healing space. She'd healed, all right, at my expense. That night, I called Camille. She was the only one I trusted. When she opened the door of her apartment, I collapsed into her arms. "I was right, wasn't I?" she whispered. "It's them." I just nodded. We sat on her living room floor with wine and Thai takeout while I laid it all out. I showed her the emails, the photos, the receipts, the fake Airbnb bookings, the concert tickets charged to my credit card. Camille's jaw dropped at one point. "Wait, Melissa used your identity to book a spa retreat?" I nodded. 3 of them. She slammed her wine glass on the table. "This isn't just cheating. This is fraud." "It's all in her handwriting," I said. "Every form, every receipt. She used my name, my address, my cards. And Brandon let it happen. Worse," I said. "He encouraged it." I showed Camille a text Brandon had sent Melissa after one of their spa weekends. "She still thinks we're on a break." She even thanked me for being so patient. Unreal. Camille stared at me, eyes glassy. "What are you going to do?" I exhaled. "Expose them, on my terms, with everything I've got." The next few weeks were a blur of silence and secrets. By day, I went to work like nothing had changed, presenting cyber fraud cases to district attorneys, advising law enforcement, mentoring 2 junior analysts who thought I had my life together. By night, I became someone else entirely, a woman dismantling the fantasy she had once called a life. I reviewed bank transactions. I found a second checking account Brandon had opened with the same credit union Melissa used. I pulled the last 12 months of activity and highlighted every transfer that connected them. I created a second board, one just for financial deception. $2,500 weekend medical conference. Actually, luxury resort in Cannon Beach. $978 gallery donation. Actually, boutique jewelry for Melissa's birthday. $3,200 withdrawal from our joint account the same week Brandon told me we couldn't afford house repairs. Melissa had used my emergency card to buy a designer handbag. Twice. The next bombshell came via Brandon's iCloud backup. I didn't expect it to be so honest. It contained a voice memo titled, "Draft. Talk to Madison." In it, Brandon's voice was calm, almost warm. "I don't want to hurt you, but the truth is, we drifted. You're always in your work, and Melissa makes me feel seen. I didn't expect this, but it happened. Maybe we all deserve to be happy, even if the path there isn't clean." I played it 6 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because it was the final piece. He was crafting a story, one where I was too career-obsessed, too distant, too cold. One where Melissa was his savior. One where he was the man trying to do the right thing, after doing every wrong thing possible. It made me sick, but it also clarified my purpose. He wanted a story? Fine. He just wouldn't be the one telling it. One night, I left a hotel receipt accidentally on the dining table. Brandon found it. Later that evening, he approached me like a man on the verge of tears. "We need to talk," he said. I nodded. He opened a folder. Inside were printed emails, fake ones. They were doctored messages between me and Ethan, my colleague, made to look like we were having an affair. "I know about you and Ethan," Brandon said. I blinked. "You forged emails to frame me." His voice trembled. "I just wanted to understand why." "You're unbelievable," I said quietly. "You cheat on me, use my money, lie to our families, and then frame me?" His hand trembled slightly. "I think we need some time apart." I didn't argue. I smiled. "I think that's a great idea." He looked surprised, relieved even. "I'll stay with Melissa for now," he added. "Of course you will," I thought. "Please take all the time you need," I said sweetly. That night, I updated my investigation board, added a new tab to my archive, attempted manipulation, reverse accusation strategy. I timestamped it, archived it, filed it under final phase. The next day, I met with a private investigator, Raphael Morgan, former fraud analyst, Harvard-educated, razor-sharp. When I handed him the folders I'd compiled, he didn't speak for a full 5 minutes. "You know," he said eventually, "I've testified in over 200 divorce cases, and I've never had a client walk in with a fully documented digital archive of betrayal." "I work in cybercrime," I said. "I know how people try to hide." Raphael leaned forward. "This isn't just an affair. This is a long-term, coordinated deception, financial, emotional, reputational. If you want to go public, I can help you do it strategically." "That's exactly what I want." We shook hands. It was the beginning of the end, for them. Over the following weeks, I gathered more evidence. Security camera footage of Brandon and Melissa entering hotels, signed logs from Airbnb hosts verifying their real names, receipts with their handwriting, texts mocking my family, plans to move in together before Christmas, my favorite holiday, and perhaps the cruelest of all, a shared folder in Melissa's Dropbox labeled "The Madison Exit Plan." Inside were notes. "Talk to Mom first. Say we grew apart. Tell Camille after. It'll look better coming from Brandon. Wait until Jan to post pics. Don't make it look like we jumped too fast." They had written me out of my own life, but I wasn't done writing. I was just getting started. Brandon thought he had won. He walked out of our house with the air of a man making a brave, necessary decision, duffel bag in hand, words rehearsed and emotionally neutral, a look of pity so polished it could have been bottled and sold. "I think this is for the best," he'd said at the threshold, with just enough tremble in his voice to make himself look like a martyr. I stood in the hallway, arms crossed over the sweater I hadn't taken off in 2 days. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply said, "Okay." To him, that meant surrender. To me, it meant checkmate, in slow motion. As the front door clicked shut behind him, a calm settled over me, like mist over cold water. The storm inside me had passed. I wasn't angry anymore. I was methodical. They wanted a story where they were star-crossed lovers, forced to navigate the awkwardness of falling for each other, while I, the frigid, oblivious wife, worked too many hours and ignored my husband. But I had a different narrative in mind, one made of truth, timestamps, and tone-matched receipts, and I was going to release it like a cinematic finale, one scene, one dinner, one moment, but first I needed allies. Step 1. Assemble a legal firewall. The next day, I met Zoe Mitchell, attorney, strategist, and quiet storm. Her office overlooked downtown Portland and smelled like cedarwood and closing arguments. She didn't offer me tea. She offered clarity. After reviewing my compiled documents, organized in labeled folders, color-coded tabs, and an external drive, she looked at me with something close to admiration. "Madison," she said, "this is the most comprehensive pre-litigation file I've ever seen." I sat quietly, watching her flip through pages of emails, screenshots, audio transcripts, and notes. "Most people come in with emotion. You came in with evidence. You're not asking to burn them. You're asking to make sure they don't rewrite history on the way out." "Exactly." She leaned back in her chair. "Oregon's a no-fault state. The courts won't care about infidelity, but fraud, identity misuse, manipulation of shared funds, now that can affect a settlement and how they're perceived." "What about defamation?" I asked. Zoe smiled. "Only if they speak first." "Perfect. Step 2. Build the archive." I went home and opened a new folder on my desktop. I titled it, "The Real Story." Inside, I built subfolders. For Mom, texts Melissa had sent while lying to her face. For Dad, bank statements showing how Brandon borrowed money to cover emergencies while spending on spa retreats with Melissa. For Camille, screenshots of their plan to discredit her if she got suspicious. For the family, a master timeline with cross-referenced data. Photos, bookings, transaction logs, GPS metadata. Each item was linked in a visual presentation and backed up in 3 places: USB drive, Dropbox, and a password-protected drive disguised as a tax folder. But it wasn't just about files. It was about timing. I wanted their entire web to collapse the moment they felt safest, so I waited. Step 3. Accept the bait. 2 weeks after Brandon left, my mother called. It was Sunday morning, and she spoke with the gentleness reserved for breakups and funerals. "Sweetheart," she said, I know things are complicated right now, but it's your father's 65th birthday next weekend. Everyone's coming. Brandon and, well, Melissa will be there too." I remained quiet. "We don't want things to be awkward," she added, "but it's important to your father. Can you come, please?" And just like that, the opportunity landed in my lap, gift-wrapped, hand-delivered. A room full of family, a reason to gather, a false sense of control for Brandon and Melissa. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I'll be there." Step 4. Schedule the strike. The week leading up to the dinner, I barely slept. I formatted every email, tailoring each one to its recipient. For my aunt, who once praised Brandon's loyalty, I included texts where he joked about lying to her face. For my cousin David, who worked in IT, I gave him raw metadata showing Melissa had used my name to access financial apps. Chut! For my uncle, the family's makeshift financial advisor, I highlighted the exact moment Brandon began draining our joint account and transferring funds to a credit union only he and Melissa used. Each email contained a short personal note from me. "I'm not asking for judgment, just understanding. You deserve the truth." And then I scheduled them, every single one using MailTimer, a delay send platform synced to Gmail. Delivery time, 6:10 p.m. Dinner start time, 5:30 p.m. Planned announcement window, 6 o'clock, 6:15 p.m. Just as Brandon would clear his throat and raise his wine glass, the digital carpet would be pulled from underneath them. To ensure fail-safe, I also prepped a printed dossier in my purse, a USB drive in my coat pocket, a video file on standby titled, "My Side of the Story." Camille came over the night before. She brought lemon cake and hard cider. We sat on my floor like teenagers planning a heist. "You're calm," she said, "because I've already won." Step 5. Become the unshakable version of myself. On the morning of the dinner, I woke up early. I showered, blow-dried my hair, and wore a navy blue wrap dress with a subtle gold necklace Brandon had given me years ago. The one Melissa once complimented like she was testing how it felt on her neck. I painted my nails the color of still water. In the mirror, I looked like someone hosting a TED Talk on healing. The only thing I carried was a small, neatly wrapped gift for my father, a carrot cake, his favorite, and a phone fully charged. Camille texted me as I pulled into my parents' driveway. "Go make history." I smiled. History was already written. Now it just needed an audience. Step 6. Showtime. My parents' house buzzed with weekend energy, football murmuring in the background, clinking glasses, laughter echoing through the kitchen. Brandon was there, so was Melissa. She wore a floral dress and too much perfume. They were sitting side by side on the couch, close enough to share body heat. They glanced at me when I entered, like they hadn't just detonated my life and moved into the ashes. I smiled. Brandon's expression faltered for just a second. Melissa waved, too casually. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you for being the bigger person." I said nothing. We sat, ate, chatted about weather and traffic and my cousin's new dog. Then came dessert. Brandon tapped his wine glass with the back of his fork. The room quieted. "I have something to say," he began. "Here it comes," I thought. He stood, reaching for Melissa's hand. "We didn't expect this, but sometimes love finds a way." That's when I stood. I pulled out my phone, opened Gmail, scrolled to the top of my scheduled queue, pressed send now. The room buzzed, phones pinged, people reached for their screens. And in less than 10 seconds, everything they thought they controlled collapsed. The room fell into a stunned silence. The sound of clinking silverware and polite birthday chatter vanished the second the notification dings echoed from every phone around the table. One by one, family members glanced down, confused, curious, unsuspecting. And then, realization. It spread across the room like a slow-moving wildfire, soft at first, then violent. My father furrowed his brow, his reading glasses perched at the end of his nose. My cousin Leah whispered, "What the hell?" Her mouth frozen mid-bite. My mother's wineglass slipped slightly in her hand, a tiny splash hitting the edge of her blouse. Melissa was the last to check. She hesitated, as if she already knew what was waiting for her. Her fingers trembled as she tapped her screen, then tapped again. And there it was. The text thread, the photos, the receipts, all curated, organized, indisputable. Brandon was the only one not holding his phone. His eyes ping-ponged across the table as expressions changed. He could feel it before he saw it, the shift. What is this?" he finally asked, feigning calm, but his voice cracked like thin ice. He reached into his pocket and unlocked his phone. I watched his lips move as he scrolled. Then came the twitch in his jaw. The blink, the complete internal system crash. Melissa, pale now, looked at me like I'd just pulled a pin from a grenade and left it in her lap. "You sent this?" she hissed. I nodded, standing slowly. "Yes, I sent the truth." "You hacked us!" Brandon snapped, his voice gaining volume like it always did when he felt out of control. "This is a gross invasion of privacy." "You've crossed a line, Madison." I tilted my head. Did I? I turned to face the room, my voice steady, hands calm at my sides. "Everyone, what you just received is the documentation of an affair between Brandon and Melissa that has lasted over 2 years. 2 years they spent lying to me, to you, to each of you directly, manipulating our family, gaslighting my reality, and building a future together behind my back. There were gasps, audible ones. I continued, "What you saw includes screenshots, GPS records, hotel bookings, text messages, shared calendars under fake names, and coordinated plans to come clean tonight during Dad's birthday dinner because they thought framing this as love would excuse the betrayal." No, Melissa said, voice cracking. "That's not what we—" She turned to my mother. "We didn't mean to hurt anyone." My mother stood slowly from her chair, both hands on the table, knuckles white. Her eyes didn't blink. "You used me," she said to Melissa. "You said you were helping plan a surprise for Madison's anniversary. You said you were bonding." Mom, I didn't—" "You asked to borrow my scarf because Brandon said it looked nice," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "And I thought it was sweet." Melissa's eyes flooded. The mascara she wore, too much, as always, began to slide down her cheeks. Brandon tried to redirect. "Look, I get that this looks bad," he began, the practiced tone of a man used to diffusing conflict with forced calm. "But let's be rational. We're adults. People fall out of love. That happens." My father stood up, slow and deliberate. His napkin dropped from his lap, forgotten. He adjusted his glasses and looked Brandon dead in the eye. "No, Brandon. People don't accidentally start affairs with their wife's sister, lie for 2 years, siphon money from joint accounts, and try to make themselves the victims in their own story. That doesn't just happen." Camille, sitting to my right, leaned in and whispered, "He just lost the room." Melissa's voice cracked. "You're humiliating us," she said, her tone brittle and shaky. "Why would you do this in front of everyone?" I turned to her, meeting her gaze with all the steadiness I could summon. "Because that's exactly how you planned to do it to me. You were going to sit here, next to my husband, and come clean in front of our family. You rehearsed your speech. You even timed it, right down to dessert. I just decided to tell my side first." Brandon looked around again, seeking rescue. My aunt wouldn't meet his eyes. My uncle crossed his arms. My cousin David held his phone out, rereading a message. "She says in this one that Madison is so wrapped up in work she won't even notice if we buy a house out of state." "You were house shopping?" he asked, incredulous. No, don't lie now," I interrupted. "It's all there. You laughed about me, mocked me. And when you finally decided to end it, you were going to frame it like it was mutual, like you'd been in pain." Brandon's facade cracked. "Okay, fine," he snapped. "We messed up, but we didn't deserve this kind of public shaming." I shrugged. "Then you shouldn't have orchestrated a public betrayal." Melissa sobbed into her hands. "You've turned everyone against me." "No," I said softly. "You did that all by yourself. I just gave them the facts." There was a pause. Then my father stepped toward them both. "I want you out," he said quietly. Brandon blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Get your things. Leave this house. You're not welcome here." "But Dad," Melissa began. Don't you dare dad me right now. You've lied, stolen, and humiliated this family. You want to be together? Go be together. But not here. Not tonight." My mother spoke next. "You should go before I say something I can't take back." The quiet was absolute. Brandon grabbed his keys. Melissa stood, mascara streaked like ink tears. No one helped them gather their things. They walked out like ghosts. The moment the door closed, the room exhaled. A long, collective breath no one realized they were holding. The rest of the night felt like sweeping glass. There was no more dinner, no cake, just stunned silence. My mother sat beside me in the living room, eyes glassy. "You knew all this and never said a word," she said softly. I nodded. "I wanted you to see it, really see it. Not through my pain, through theirs." She reached for my hand. "I'm so sorry, baby." "I know. I should have noticed. I should have stopped it." "You weren't supposed to notice. They were careful with you." I think that's what hurt the most. We sat like that for a long time. My father eventually joined us, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you," he said. "For exposing them? No, for not letting them turn you into a victim, for holding the line." When I finally got home, I poured a glass of wine, changed into pajamas, and curled up on the couch. My phone buzzed with message after message, relatives, friends, co-workers who had received the evidence. Every message said the same thing. "I had no idea. You didn't deserve that. You are incredible." I read each one slowly. Camille sent a voice note. "Girl, you didn't just survive, you set the fucking standard." I smiled. Not because I was proud of what I'd done, but because I finally felt clean. No more pretending, no more half-truths, no more performing strength while bleeding in private, just clarity. Brandon and Melissa could spin their story however they wanted, but this time they were dealing with a woman who owned the entire script, and she had receipts. 3 months later, I stood at the window of my new apartment, watching the sun dip behind the Willamette River. It cast streaks of gold across the glass buildings, turning downtown Portland into a watercolor painting. This apartment was smaller, 2 bedrooms, open kitchen, creaky floorboards, but it was mine. No shared closets, no hidden folders, no lies. Just clean, uncluttered space, filled with light and silence that didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt free. That morning I had signed the final divorce papers. Brandon didn't show up. He sent his attorney instead, an overly groomed man in a navy suit who barely made eye contact. I didn't need Brandon there anyway. The last conversation we had was the night of my father's birthday dinner, the night I pulled the curtain on the narrative he and Melissa had tried to sell. Since then, we hadn't spoken. No messages, no apologies, no desperate attempts at redemption. Melissa had tried once, an email with no subject line, full of half-hearted explanations and poetic self-pity. "We didn't plan to fall in love," she wrote. "It just happened. I hope one day you can understand that love doesn't follow rules." I didn't respond. Love might not follow rules, but betrayal always follows patterns. The divorce settlement was fair, tilted in my favor, thanks to Zoe's surgical strategy and Raphael's airtight documentation. Brandon's financial manipulations, Melissa's identity misuse, the emotional abuse I'd compiled like a prosecutorial brief. They gave me leverage without ever stepping into a courtroom. I kept the house. I kept the car. I kept full ownership of my cybersecurity consulting firm, ClearNet Strategies, which had recently been approved for a state-level educational contract. Melissa's name? Erase it from every record. Brandon's reputation? Still intact publicly, for now, but privately he'd lost all moral currency. Our family made no effort to shield him. Invitations to events quietly dried up. His name stopped appearing in conversations. He had become a shadow in the story he thought he'd own. After signing the papers, I walked to a tiny cafe 2 blocks from the courthouse. It was called River's Edge, tucked into a corner with floor-to-ceiling windows and Edison bulbs that buzzed softly. Camille was already there, sitting in our favorite booth with a mug of oat milk lavender latte and a grin on her face. She stood when she saw me. "Well?" she asked. I exhaled slowly. "It's done." She hugged me so tight I almost cried right there, but instead I laughed. A real, full-bodied laugh, the kind that comes from deep in your chest when a weight has finally been lifted. We clinked coffee mugs like champagne glasses and toasted to badass rebirths. Camille handed me a tiny envelope. Inside was a keychain, a small silver phoenix. "I saw it at a market," she said. "Figured it looked familiar." That weekend, I did something I never thought I'd do. I deleted the folder. Project. Truth, the master archive. Screenshots, transcripts, timelines, recordings, gone. No backups, no USB, no emergency Dropbox. I'd held on to it like armor, like proof that I hadn't imagined it all. But I didn't need proof anymore. The truth had already served its purpose. It had been seen, it had been believed, and now it could be let go. I emptied the trash bin on my desktop, shut the laptop, and felt a peace settle into my bones. Closure wasn't a grand ceremony. It was a quiet moment in sweatpants with a soft breeze blowing in from the balcony. Healing wasn't linear. There were still days I woke up and reached for the other side of the bed instinctively. Still mornings, I expected to hear Brandon in the shower or see a notification from Melissa. But when those reflexes came, I didn't shame myself. I let them pass like waves. Some days I swam. Some days I floated. Some days I just stayed still and let the tide hold me. And with every passing week, the pain dulled into memory. Not absence, but distance. One Sunday, I hosted a brunch in my new apartment. Just the people who mattered. Camille brought mini quiches. My cousin Leah brought champagne. My parents came with fresh flowers and orange juice. My dad brought his toolbox and fixed a squeaky hinge on the balcony door without being asked. As we laughed and passed dishes across my tiny counter, I looked around and realized I was whole. Not healed like a scar. Not patched, but rebuilt. Brandon and Melissa weren't mentioned once. They didn't belong in the room anymore. A few weeks later, I got an email from a nonprofit I'd worked with briefly the year before, Digital Daughters, a program that taught teenage girls coding, cybersecurity, and digital literacy. They were launching a mentorship conference and wanted me to be their keynote speaker. "You're calm under pressure," the email read. "Smart, empathetic, resilient, and your work has already made a difference." I reread the message 3 times, then I said yes. The morning of the event, I stood backstage with a mic clipped to my blazer and a small stack of notes in my hand. A few hundred high school girls filled the auditorium, their faces hopeful, skeptical, curious. Some of them reminded me of myself at that age, eager to prove something but unsure what. When it was my turn, I stepped into the light. "Good morning," I began. "I'm not here to list my degrees or job titles. I'm here to tell you something more important. Something I wish someone had told me when I was 17. Pause. In your life, people will try to define you. They'll write your story for you, call you dramatic, overreactive, untrusting, too emotional, too cold, too soft, too much. Pause again. But here's the truth. You hold the pen. You decide how the story is told. You decide when to speak, and you decide when to burn the script and start again." The room was quiet. Then a girl in the 3rd row raised her hand. She asked, "How do you know when it's time to start again?" I smiled. When the silence inside you starts to feel heavier than the noise around you, that's when. I still think about them sometimes. Brandon, Melissa. Not with anger, not even with sadness, just clarity. I heard Melissa moved to Arizona, tried to start over. She deleted most of her social media. Brandon, from what I know, still works at the same hospital. But word gets around, the birthday dinner became a legend, and not in the way they hoped. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need them to suffer, because I found something better. Freedom, a clean life, a fresh name on my mailbox, a quiet morning coffee with no second guessing. Now I wake up and choose myself every single day. I light a eucalyptus candle. I turn on Billie Holiday. I stretch in the sunlight of my tiny kitchen and breathe in the peace that only comes after war. I am not the woman who was betrayed. I am not the sister who was erased. I am not the wife who was discarded. I am the woman who watched the whole house burn and walked out barefoot with her head high. I am the story's author now, and this is just the beginning.